Good morning to all of you. And I've been asked to sort of lay out for all of you this morning in whatever it is, 19 minutes now, I guess, my idea of India. And in some ways, it's very simple because it really emerges from some ideas that have been around for an awfully long time. There's an idea of India that's in a civilizational sense that goes back to the Vedic references to Bharatvarsh as a land between the Himalayas and the sea. And that's an ancient idea. It's an idea of nationhood, which, for example, the Harvard professor Diana Eck described as a sort of sacred land knit together by countless tracks of pilgrimage. And if that seems a terribly Hindu idea, well, it's also shared outside because Maulana Azad wrote about how Indians going on the Hajj, whether they were Pakhtuns from the northwest or Tamils from the south, were all universally called by the Arabs on the Arab Peninsula as Hindi, because they seem to be coming from a distinctive civilization and a distinctive civilizational space called Hind. There's also, of course, the more modern idea of India since 1947, the boundaries of our nationhood. And that idea, again, is a somewhat complicated one because in some ways, if you look at our astonishing variety and diversity, it's almost as if the European Union suddenly dissolved all their individual sovereignties and came together as one country with one capital, one constitution, one political system. That's the kind of diversity we incorporate within that idea of India. But I essentially come down very simply to the idea that established the present contours of our country on the 15th of August, 1947. Because as you know, our country was born, our birth was also an abortion. It was a birth that witnessed the savage partition of the land. And at that time, it was an era where within the next 5 years, there were other partitions. You had East and West Germany, you had North and South Korea, North and South Vietnam. But unlike all of those, ours wasn't geographical. It wasn't all North Indians going one way and South Indians going another. Ours had nothing to do with ideology. It wasn't all the communists or Marxists going into one country and the capitalists going into another. Ours was based on a totally different dispute. It was about one simple question, whether religion should be the basic determinant of nationhood. And those who said that their religion determined their national identity, they went off and created Pakistan. And those who remained said, no, our struggle for freedom was a struggle for everyone, and we are determined to create a country for everyone. And they spent the next 3 years writing a constitution, 2 years and a bit, writing a constitution that incorporated that fundamental idea. That fundamental principle was the idea of India. The idea essentially that it didn't actually matter what your caste was, your religion was, your language was, which part of the country you were born in, the color of your skin. If you were a citizen of India, you would have the same rights as everyone else, and none of those factors mattered at all. That was the essential idea of India. And in those situations, you found a number of challenges, undoubtedly, because of this vast variety we've talked about. Pakistan had just been created as a country for India's Muslims, and the question was asked whether Muslims in India should have a different sort of place. In fact, in the Constituent Assembly, somebody stood up and said, well, now that the Muslims have got their own state, shouldn't we declare India as a Hindu state? And it was overwhelmingly rejected by the Constituent Assembly because the far-seeing leaders of our country came down firmly on the idea that everyone was Indian, everyone who laid claim to our citizenship by virtue of birth and upbringing and belonging, they had the same rights as everyone else. And if one really needed to just look at two examples of how this played out, I would just go to 1971. I was in high school at the time, but it's come back over and over again as I look back on that war when the Pakistani generals were foolish enough to proclaim a jihad against the Hindu unbeliever. And they confronted a military headed on the Indian side by a general who's Parsi, General Manekshaw, with an air force in the northern sector commanded by a Muslim, Air Marshal, later Air Chief Marshal Latif. In the east, where the war was fought in what was then East Pakistan, the general officer commanding the Eastern Command was a Sikh, General Jasdeep Singh Arora, and the general we helicoptered into Dhaka to negotiate the terms of surrender of the Pakistanis was Jewish, Major General J.F.R. Jacob. That was India in 1971. And I've been to that tiny island in Diu where there is a memorial to the only ship we lost in the 71 war, INS Kukri, that sank with all hands on board. Captain Mullah, in command of the ship, went down with the others. And you read the names of every sailor and Jawan who perished on INS Kukri in this memorial in Diu. And you will see every community in India represented there. You will see every religion, every region of the country. No one has a monopoly on the idea of India. Everyone has shed their blood, sacrificed their lives to preserve and protect our India. And it's from there that my idea emerges. It's clearly not the classic idea of nationalism, which came to the world from Europe, where nations were organized around a contiguity of language, ethnicity, and geography, because none of those criteria really apply in India. I mean, our perfect geography of Bharatvarsh, the Himalayas and the sea, was hacked by the partition of 1947.